Again, for the quiz, you will have the beginning part of this 5-3 notes on the quiz on Wednesday. However, the majority of the questions are from 5-1 and 5-2. There are 7 questions on the quiz on Wednesday, no calculator, and you get 25 minutes. So you're going to need to work rapidly because some of the questions ask you to fill in 6 answers. So just be careful, be able to work rapidly. So again, quiz will cover, for example, this example, and then also this one that I had changed on Friday. I made this side a 3, this one a 5, and for those of you who recognized the 3, 4, 5 Pythagorean triple, you didn't have to do Pythagorean theorem here. This could have been A, this was B, and this was C. And then from there you plug them in, find sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, and cotangent. Then we also reviewed the special right triangles. In the homework that was due today, you had to resort back to your geometry days where we also had in front of this was A, this was A, this was A root 2, over here was A, this was 2A, and this was A radical 3. So to answer the triangles in the homework that were stuck together, this is how you had to solve it. It wasn't just the simple 1, 1 root 2 or 1, 2 root 3. Then we filled in the 6 values for these trig functions using our special right triangle. This was from the 30, 60, 90. And then we did the same thing for the 45, 45, 90. Remember on Friday, I told you to memorize that tangent and cotangent when you're asked to do this problem. If I say cotangent of 45, always remember it's a 1. Same thing here if it's tangent. Because when we get to the last part of the notes today, if I give you a question and I say, find the value of theta when tangent of theta equals 1, if you've memorized this, you know your reference angle is 45, and then you also just have to find the additional second angle. But we're going to see that coming up. We're going to use the fact that's on this slide when we're looking for reference angles. So whenever you find your reference angle, and when we get to do the last few slides, we're going to have to do calculations for a 30, a 60, and a 45. So just remember that these reference angles, these are all angles that exist in quadrant 1. Remember to find the angle for quadrant 2. We take the 180 and you minus the reference angle. Something in quadrant 3 will be the angle. What we're going to do here is it's going to be 180 plus the reference angle, because what we're doing here is solving this equation. And then over here, we would do 360 minus the reference angle, and that would give us the angle. So we're actually remanipulating this equation. All right, so we already did 6 through 9. Did I finish number 9 with you guys? But do you have it filled in? Or do I need to start from number 9? We got it? Okay, let's start with number 10. All right, so starting at number 10, we're going to do the same thing that we just did on the previous slide. We're going to draw the angles first. Now, on the quiz on Wednesday, you will be graphing these angles. So this is actually a good practice to get you ready for the quiz. So let's first draw our 210-degree angle. I'm going to first come around here. It's a positive, so I'm going to go counterclockwise. So I'm going to go 90 degrees, then another 90 gets me to 180, and then to get to 210 degrees, I've got to go 30 degrees more. So this is a graphed angle that's 210 degrees. So remember, my reference angle is the 30 degrees. That additional amount of degrees that we went past 180 to get us to 210. Remember, when we make our triangles, it's always back to the x-axis, never to y. Now that I've realized that I've got a 30-degree reference angle, I could fill in the 60. This is where you're memorizing the sides. Remember, across from the 30-degree angle is 1. Across from the 90 degrees, the hypotenuse will be 2. And then across from the 60 is the square root of 3. You're memorizing the location of the 1, 2, square root 3. Next, I need to know the signs. So if you recall from Friday, in quadrant 1, the signs are positive, positive. Over here in quadrant 2, the x is negative, the y is positive. Quadrant 3, which is where I am for this problem, the signs are a negative x and a negative y. And lastly, for quadrant 4, the x is positive, the y is negative. So I can come over here and make both my x and my y negative. The root 3 is your x, and the 1 is your y value. Now that I've set up my triangle, put in all the sides, now I need to figure out which side are used in secant. So across from the 30, this is the opposite side, this is adjacent, and this one's hypotenuse. I know that secant is the reciprocal to cosine. Cosine is normally adjacent over hypotenuse, so secant is going to be hypotenuse over adjacent. So I'm going to put in the numbers. Hypotenuse is 2. Adjacent is negative square root 3. Remember, you can never ever leave a radical in the denominator, so I need to rationalize. This ends up giving me 2 square root 3 over 3, and it's negative. Another way you can double check that you do have the right sign on your final answer, remember you can also do your all students take calculus. My angle ended up in quadrant 3, and the only ones that are positive in quadrant 3 are tangent and cotangent, and we were doing secant. So getting a negative answer is correct. Let's try the next one. We're going to first graph the 135-degree angle for cotangent. So let's graph the 135 first. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go 90 degrees, then 90 plus 45, and now I've just graphed 135 degrees. Remember, the reference angle is always back to the x-axis. So if I can continue that circle or that semicircle, 45 degrees is what's left. So now I can go ahead and put in my sides. So for the 45, 45, the two legs are both 1, and the hypotenuse is the square root of 2. Again, remember in quadrant 2, your signs are going to be negative, positive, so this one is negative. For cotangent, it's reciprocal of tangent, so tangent would normally be TOA, so cotangent is going to be adjacent over opposite. So my adjacent is negative 1, and my opposite is positive 1. This one's the adjacent. It's next to the 45, and that's the opposite. This simplifies to negative 1. Again, you can double check it with your all students take calculus. In quadrant 2, only sine and cosecant are positive, so getting a negative cotangent is correct for quadrant 2. Let's try number 12. Number 12 is the same angle that we just drew for number 10. So I'm going to draw this exact same angle, but now I'm going to do cosecant. So come around here, 90, 180, 30 degrees more, gets me a 210-degree angle. Again, your triangle goes back to the x-axis, not to y. This is 30 degrees. This is 60. Across from 30 is 1. Across from 60 is root 3. And the hypotenuse is 2. The hypotenuse will always be positive. Remember, the signs in quadrant 3 are negative, negative. So a -1 and a negative square root 3. Now I have to figure out which sides, and I can label these as well. This one's hypotenuse, this one's opposite to 30, and this one's adjacent to 30. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. Sine is normally so, opposite over hypotenuse, so cosecant will be hypotenuse over opposite. Hypotenuse is 2, opposite to 30 is -1. So cosecant of 210 is -2. Again, I'm in quadrant 3. Quadrant 3, only tangent and cotangent are the positive functions. So getting a negative answer is good. Now we're going to do one that's greater than 510. I mean greater than 360. It's going to be -510. So let's go ahead and draw our axis. So I need to draw a 510-degree angle. So what I can do here is find the coterminal angle, the positive coterminal angle, because I need to find an angle that's between 0 and 360. So I'm going to add 360 and I get 150. So let's graph it. So if I start out here, remember negative goes clockwise. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to circle around one full circle. I've gone 360 degrees. Then to get 510, I need to add 150. And then I'm now at 510. So if I add 150, 90, and then 60 degrees more, and now I've just drawn my -510-degree angle. My reference angle, remember what it's taking to get to the x-axis, and this angle that remains is 30 degrees. I can fill in. Across from 30 is 1, across from 60 is root 3, and then here's your hypotenuse. I'm doing sine. Remember sine, if you memorize so, it's opposite over hypotenuse. So let me put in the labels here. This one's opposite, hypotenuse. This one would be adjacent. Let me add in the signs as well. I'm in quadrant 3. So my x is negative and so is my y. So the x is the negative root 3 and the y is the -1. Let's fill it into opposite over hypotenuse. So for here, opposite is -1, hypotenuse is 2. So the answer for sine of -510 is -1/2. Notice, yes?
You could have just, you would have gotten the same answer with -150 as well.
Correct, and that's what I was about to say. Good. I could have also done sine of -150, and it gets you the same answer. So you don't have to worry about that swirl around. You get the same answer, which is going to lead us into the next slide after this one, that there's going to be 2 answers to the problems. Because remember, we can do it for coterminal angles and get the same value. So let's try the last example. It's 1020 negative. So let's go ahead and draw this. Again, we're going to have to swirl around. So you can do it 2 ways. You can either start adding 360 until you get to the 1020. So one circle around, and it's negative, so I'm going clockwise. First time around, it's at 360. Then I need to go around again, and now I'm at 720. I still need to get to 1020. So if I add another 300, I finally make it. So now I need to go another 300 degrees. So 90, 180, 270, and then 30 more gets me to 300. Giving me a reference angle of 60. Now you could have done it the other way. You could have added 360 and got negative 660, add 360 one more time, and then you could see that you had to draw in a negative 300 degree angle. Either way, and find out that your reference angle is 60. So up here's the 30. Remember, across from 30 is 1, across from 60 is the square root of 3, and the hypotenuse is 2. I'm in quadrant 1. Signs in quadrant 1 are positive, positive. So all I need to do here is put it into tangent, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. Let me go ahead and add that in here. This one's opposite, this one's adjacent. 2 would be the hypotenuse. So tangent is going to be square root of 3 over 1, which simplifies to square root of 3. So that is it for this part where they ask you to find the value. Now, on the quiz, it'll say find the exact value. So they don't want you to use your calculator. They don't want it rounded. They want all of our answers left in radical form. All right, let's try. Now what we're going to do is they're going to give us the problem and they're going to say find theta when it equals root 3. However, they're going to restrict your answers, and they have to be answers between 0 and 360. So technically, if they didn't restrict my value, theta here could be the negative 1020. But because they're going to have a restriction, and it's going to say only give angles in between 0 and 360, giving me an answer of negative 1020 would be wrong. So notice the parentheses around the 360. What this means is you can't include 360 as an answer. So you can give me 359, but you can't give me 360. It's the cutoff point. So now what we need to do is find all the values of theta that will give us the answer of negative square root 2 over 2. Now, all of the angles that we're going to be finding are going to be based on a reference angle from the special right triangles. They're all going to have a reference angle of either 30, 60, or 45. A clue here is if you see an answer that's got square root 2, then you know it's the 45, 45, 90 triangle. If you see square root 3, then you know it's going to be the 30, 60, 90. Now, if you take a look on the previous slide, notice some of our answers were 2 or negative 1. Those are going to be a little bit more challenging, and you're still going to have to figure it out. Again, if you see an answer of 1 or negative 1, that should be a clue that your reference angle is 45. So for this problem, I see that I have the square root of 2. So this tells me my reference angle is going to be 45. So let's just go ahead and figure out what theta is, but I'm going to show you how they got to that. So again, we're using that previous slide. So remember the reference angle, it goes here from quadrant 1. Remember in quadrant 2, the way that you find out that angle that's in that quadrant is you take 180 and you subtract the reference angle. So I'm going to do 180 minus 45, and the angle measure in quadrant 2 will be 135. In quadrant 3, we take 180 and we add the reference angle. So I'm going to be doing 180 plus 45, and this gives me 225 in quadrant 3. Quadrant 4, it's always 360 minus the reference angle. So I'm doing 360 minus 45, and the angle for quadrant 4 will be 315. My advice to you is have this on your paper that you're going to use for the test. That way you don't have to go through and add and subtract it from 180 or subtract it from 360. It's going to save that calculation time. So here, I need to figure out where cosine is negative. So this is where I'm going to use my all students take calculus. I'm going to only look for where cosine is negative, and cosine is positive here and here. So the only place cosine's negative is at 135 and 225. So theta equals 135 and 225. Now, just to show you that this was actually a rationalized answer, let's just draw the triangle. This is what you're normally going to have to do for the 30, 60, 90. And again, to save time on the test, maybe already have a 30, 60, 90 and a 45, 45, 90 already drawn and labeled. So here, this is 45, 45, 1, 1, root 2. Remember, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So if I base it off of this 45, this is adjacent, this is opposite, this is hypotenuse. So adjacent, 1 over the square root of 2, rationalize it. Root 2 over 2, that's how I got to my answer. So this is what you're going to do for the 30, 60, 90 is have your triangle drawn and then figure out which reference angle you need. Again, when you see root 2, you really don't need to draw the triangle. Just have this thing already figured out and then just eliminate the ones that aren't the right sign. Yes?
How did you know which quadrants was correct?
Okay, so again, to know which ones I'm going to keep, I use my all students take calculus. It gave me this, cosine theta equals negative root 2 over 2. So what I'm doing is looking to see which ones cosine is negative in, and cosine is negative here and here, because all are positive here, and cosine and secant are positive here. So that's how I knew to throw those two away and only keep 2 and 3. That make sense? Mm-hmm. All right, let's go ahead and let me add a slide, and let's go ahead and figure out the 4 angles for the 30 and the 60, and then we'll finish up the examples. So let's add a page, and we're going to do the same we just did for 45. Let me go ahead and quick do it. So again, when your reference angle is 45 degrees, fix that, reference angle, 45 is the location of the angle in quadrant 1. Remember, in quadrant 2, it's always 180 minus the reference angle, and we just saw that this was 135. In quadrant 3, remember, it's 180 plus the reference angle, 225. Quadrant 4, 360 minus the reference angle, and this one gives me 315. Again, if you have these already set up, then it's a matter of just knowing which ones to keep, which ones are positive and negative depending on the trig function they give you. Now let's do the same thing for the 30 and the 60. So let's say our reference angle is 30. I'm going to do the same exact calculations. The 30 goes here. That's quadrant 1. Quadrant 2, remember you take 180 and you minus the reference angle. So in quadrant 2, the angle will be 150. And then when we do quadrant 3, we're going to add 180 plus 30. And I get 210. And then for quadrant 4, 360 minus 30, and I get 330. I'm going to do the same thing for the 60. So if my reference angle is the 60-degree angle, 60 goes here. Quadrant 2, 180 minus 60, so it's 120. Quadrant 3, 180 plus 60, it's 240. Quadrant 4, 360 minus 60, and it's 300. Again, the calculations aren't that difficult, but again, we want to be able to save as much time as possible. So if you already have these figured out, then you can just quickly look at it and see, okay, I'm doing tangent, it's positive, know where you need to keep the positives, like 1 and 3, and then you would just keep those. Yes?
So, you're allowed to have a sheet like that on the test?
I'm probably going to restrict you to one paper again.
Yeah.
So again, I would have this already done for the test. It'll save time.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, everybody ready? Let's do the last one. Answers to these problems are going to be one of these 12 angles, or 2 of them at a time, or 4 if it's plus minus. So if you're getting questions like this on the test and it says find the exact value, it's going to be one of these angles, or 2 of them. Most of the time it's 2, sometimes it's 4. It might be no solution if I give you something that doesn't make sense. So let's try it. Just to have this handy dandy reference sheet here. All right, so now we're going to use all of our... Here we go with cosine. I see square root 3. That's going to be a clue that the triangle that you're using is 30, 60, 90. You need to know where the sides go. Again, across from 30 is 1, across from 60 is square root 3, and the hypotenuse is 2. I'm not worried about signs here. I'm just worried about the placement of the 1, 2, square root 3. Now, for this one, I need to figure out which angle, the 30 or the 60, when I plug it into adjacent over hypotenuse, gives me this answer. Best way I can tell you to do it is just quickly do it. So if you label the sides for the 30, the side opposite to 30 is here, and this is adjacent, and this is always hypotenuse. But cosine, we just need adjacent over hypotenuse. So this would be root 3 over 2. And look, I already found my answer. Because it gave me this, I get the negative sign based on my all students take calculus. Let's say you did cosine of 60 first. Here's the 60. Now the 1 becomes the adjacent. So then this would have been 1 over 2, which isn't this answer, so that's why it's not cosine of 60. So my advice to you is quickly do them both and figure out which one is the reference angle. So I can see my reference angle is 30. So then if you go back to the slide where you already filled them in, you can also quickly fill in all students take calculus. I want the quadrants that have cosine negative. So this tells me get rid of this and get rid of this. I'm looking for the picture that has the 30 here, and then it has the 150, the 210, and the 330. The only answers you're keeping are 150 and 210, because that's where cosine is negative. So theta on this problem is 150 and 210. If the question said cosine theta equals positive root 3 over 2, then the answers would have been from 1 and 4. Then that would have been 30 degrees and 330. So this sign tells you which 2 to pick. Everybody good? Let's try another one. Root 3 again. Now, You don't need to keep redrawing the triangles if on your paper that you're going to bring to the test. If you've already got a 30, 60, 90 drawn, you can keep using the same one over and over again. So here across from 30 is 1, across from 60 is root 3, hypotenuse is 2. Again, I'm going to just quickly do tangent of both 30 and of 60 to see which one gives me negative, or just gives me square root of 3. So tangent, remember, is TOA, so opposite over adjacent. So if I do tangent of 30 and tangent of 60, in reference to the 30, my opposite is the 1, and my adjacent is the square root of 3. So 1 over the square root of 3, it's not going to be this one because I got to rationalize this. So this one gives you root 3 over 3. But tangent of 60, let's change the labels now. This one's opposite. This one's now adjacent when we talk about 60. So square root 3 over 1, which gives you what they were asking you to find. Now we just have to figure out where tangent's negative by doing our all students take calculus. I know tangent is positive here and here. So I'm just looking for the two angles from quadrant 2 and 4. And again, if you already have it filled out, you know that this is going to be 60. This one's 120. This one is 240. And this one's 300. So the two answers are what I circled in blue. The answers are 120 degrees and 300 degrees. So again, the math is easy enough to get the 120. Again, it's 180 minus the reference angle, and here's 360 minus the reference angle. It's fast enough, but again, you know, when you're stressed, it might be easier. Let's try 17. Plus minus. This tells me that it's going to be all 4 once I find the reference angle. So for cosecant, I see again a root 3. So again, I'm doing 30, 60, 90. Across from 60 is root 3. This is 1, this is 2. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So I'm going to be doing hypotenuse over opposite. So again, I'm going to do cosecant of 30 and cosecant of 60 to see which one gives me that answer. So let's first label the sides based on the 30. I just need to find where the opposite is located because I'm using opposite and hypotenuse. So 2 over 1, which simplifies to 2. You can already see this one's going to be out of there. So let's try the 60. So if I label, opposite is over here. This is still hypotenuse. So square root of 3 over 2. I did that backwards. I'm doing hypotenuse over opposite. So 2 over root 3, I need to rationalize. 2 root 3 over 3, which is what I was trying to get. And now I can see my reference angle is 60. And because of the plus minus, I'm getting all 4 of them. So in quadrant 1, here's the 60. Then I have the 120, the 240, and the 300. So all 4 because my original problem had plus minus. One last example. Root 3 again. Let's go ahead and set this up. 60, 30, root 3, 1, 2. Tangent uses opposite over adjacent. So again, I would quickly do tangent of 30 and tangent of 60 to see which one gives you root 3 over 3. So in reference to the 30, this one's opposite, this one's adjacent. So I get 1 over the square root of 3, and this is going to be my answer after I rationalize. This gives me root 3 over 3, so my reference angle is 30. If you want to just double check it, in reference to the 60, this is now opposite. This would now be adjacent. So then this would give you root 3 over 1, which isn't what we wanted. So again, we confirmed that the reference angle is 30. Let's add in our all students take calculus. The only ones we need are where tangent's positive, and that's going to be here and here. So for the 30 degrees, this one over here, if you looked at your paper, this one's going to be 210. It's 180 plus 30, and you get 210. So theta here equals 30 degrees and 210 degrees. So remember when I was going through the slides at the beginning, let's say you get something that says tangent of theta equals 1. Remember I told you to memorize that tangent of 45 equals 1. Notice before I told you when you see root 2, it's 45, 45. When you see root 3, it's the 30, 60, 90. But if you see a 1, you're like, oh no, what am I going to do? This is where it saves time. Tangent of 45 is 1, so my reference angle is 45. I need to find where tangent's positive. All students take calculus. You can see it's going to be positive here and here. So then you could just take out your handy dandy paper and figure out what 180 plus 45 is, and you can see that that's also going to be 225. So this is where it might save you some time if you've memorized that. Because again, from the 45, 45, remember it was 1 divided by 1, opposite over adjacent, that's how we get the 1. So again, what I just covered now, this is for the 5-3B homework, which is now due on Thursday. Your homework tonight is the quiz review. It must be completed and turned into Canvas. Tomorrow we'll go over it in class, and then I'll answer any questions anybody has. Any questions for now? All right, that is it. Anybody need me to go back to any slides?